I hope we don't go back to some of the practices in the past that, Harry and I had to grow up in. And I'll do everything I can to make sure we don't regress in that situation. I think it's safe to say that change is on my agenda. Change for good. And I embrace that and I enjoy that change. I don't fear it. That's the bit that excites me, is the idea of being able to bring some change.
A single folder, 5 in the morning, and the decision that just destroyed Meghan Markle's life forever. What Prince William discovered was so shocking, so utterly devastating that he had no choice but to act immediately. The evidence? Absolutely damning. The target? Catherine at her most vulnerable. And the consequences? Unlike anything the royal family has ever done before.
Within the family, as such, there's the spare and the heir. My brother being the heir and me being the spare. And so I think it was just a really good opportunity to choose a title that had been somewhat used against me for a long part of my life.
Palace insiders are in absolute chaos. The public is demanding answers. And Meghan, her world just collapsed in ways no one saw coming. In the early hours of a December morning, while most of Britain still slept, Prince William sat alone in the kitchen of Anmere Hall. The Norfolk countryside was quiet, wrapped in that particular stillness that comes just before dawn. There were no staff members bustling about, no children's voices echoing through the hallways, just the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the old house settling. On the wooden table in front of him lay a folder, unremarkable in appearance but containing information that would fundamentally alter his approach to protecting his family and the institution he will one day lead. The contents of this folder had been compiled over several weeks by a team of digital security specialists and investigators. What they had uncovered was not the usual noise of social media criticism or the typical tabloid speculation that royal families have learned to navigate over generations. Instead, the evidence pointed to something far more deliberate and coordinated. According to multiple reports from royal correspondents and sources familiar with the matter, the documentation revealed patterns of organised online activity specifically targeting Catherine, Princess of Wales. The timing of this discovery was particularly significant. Catherine had only recently returned to limited public duties following her completion of chemotherapy treatment, a health battle she had bravely shared with the public earlier in the year. Announcement in September that she had completed her treatment had been met with widespread relief and support across the United Kingdom and around the world. Yet even during this period of recovery, when most would expect a protective buffer of public goodwill, the digital attacks had not only continued but appeared to intensify. The investigators had traced patterns that suggested coordination rather than spontaneous reaction. Social media accounts, some newly created and others dormant for extended periods before suddenly becoming active, began posting remarkably similar messages at strategically timed intervals. The language used across these accounts showed distinctive patterns, suggesting either central coordination or the use of templates. Financial analysts brought into the investigation identified payment trails leading to services known for providing artificial engagement and automated posting capabilities. What made these findings particularly troubling was the sophistication involved. This was not a matter of a handful of individuals expressing critical opinions, which is a normal part of public discourse in democratic societies. Instead, the evidence suggested the use of bot networks, automated accounts designed to mimic human behavior while amplifying specific narratives. These networks operated across multiple platforms simultaneously, creating an appearance of widespread organic sentiment when the reality was far more manufactured. The attacks themselves focused on various aspects of Catherine's public life and personal character. Some questioned her commitment to royal duties during her health treatment, a line of criticism that many commentators found particularly callous given the circumstances. Others attempted to create narratives around her relationship with other members of the royal family, sowing seeds of discord where palace insiders consistently reported harmony and mutual support. Still others took aim at her parenting, her fashion choices, her public speaking. Essentially any visible aspect of her life became potential ammunition. According to sources who have spoken to royal correspondents over recent months, the volume and intensity of these attacks had a noticeable impact. Catherine, known for her composure and dedication to duty, had reportedly expressed private concern about the relentlessness of the negativity. For someone recovering from serious illness attempting to regain strength while also maintaining her responsibilities as a mother to 3 young children and as a senior working royal. The additional psychological burden was considerable. Prince William had been aware of online criticism directed at his wife for years. Any public figure, particularly members of the royal family, faces scrutiny and commentary as an inherent part of their position. However, what this investigation revealed went beyond the boundaries of normal public discourse. The documentation showed that spikes in negative activity correlated with specific events in Catherine's calendar, particularly her public appearances during and after her treatment. When she attended Wimbledon in July, participating in one of her key patronages despite ongoing treatment, the negative commentary surged. When she appeared at Trooping the Colour in June, her first public engagement of the year, another wave followed. The investigators also identified what they described as narrative seeding, where specific false or misleading claims would first appear in obscure online forums before being amplified through networks of accounts until they reached mainstream social media platforms. Once there, these narratives would be picked up by commentary channels and gossip sites, giving them a veneer of legitimacy despite their dubious origins. This pattern suggested a level of strategic planning inconsistent with organic public sentiment. As William read through page after page of evidence that morning, the full scope of what his wife had endured became clear. The analysis included timestamps showing posts appearing in coordinated bursts, often during British nighttime hours when authentic UK-based users would be asleep. It included screenshots of identical or near-identical messages posted by dozens of different accounts within minutes of each other. It included financial documentation showing payments to services that specialize in artificial social media engagement. Perhaps most disturbing was the evidence suggesting that whoever orchestrated this campaign understood precisely when Catherine would be most vulnerable. The intensity of attacks during her chemotherapy treatment was not coincidental. It represented a calculated effort to maximize emotional impact during a period when she had limited capacity to respond or defend herself publicly. For William, this crossed a line from criticism into something approaching cruelty. The prince had long adhered to the traditional royal approach of never complain, never explain, a philosophy that has guided the monarchy through countless controversies over the decades. However, as he sat in that quiet kitchen absorbing the evidence before him, a realization crystallized. There are moments when silence ceases to be dignified restraint and becomes complicated. There are times when the old rules, designed for an era of slower communication and more controlled media environments, simply do not provide adequate protection in the face of modern digital warfare. By the time the first light began to filter through the windows of Anmere Hall, William had made his decision. This could not be addressed through traditional means. A strongly worded statement from Kensington Palace would do nothing to stop coordinated bot networks. A legal letter to a handful of publications would not address a campaign operating across international borders and multiple platforms simultaneously. What was required was a comprehensive response, one that would establish clear boundaries about what would and would not be tolerated, and one that would send an unmistakable message to whoever was behind these attacks. The question that remained, however, was not simply how to respond, but who was responsible. The investigation had traced financial trails and identified patterns, but the ultimate source remained deliberately obscured through layers of shell companies and international transactions. Yet the sophistication and specific targeting suggested this was not the work of random internet trolls or even tabloid journalists pursuing stories. This required resources, planning, and detailed knowledge of royal schedules and Catherine's personal circumstances. As William considered the possibilities, he knew that whatever action he took would need to be decisive, irreversible, and comprehensive enough to neutralize the threat regardless of its origin. The decision Prince William made that morning was not announced with fanfare or public statements. There were no press conferences hastily arranged, no official palace announcements released to the media, no dramatic confrontations that would later be dissected by commentators and royal watchers. Instead, what followed was a series of quiet, deliberate actions that would fundamentally reshape the landscape of royal relationships, though the public would not immediately understand the full extent of what had occurred. Within hours of reviewing the intelligence dossier, William contacted a small circle of senior advisors. These were individuals who had served the royal household for years, people whose discretion was beyond question and whose understanding of both protocol and practical realities made them invaluable in sensitive situations. The instruction he gave them was brief but carried enormous weight. He directed them to activate what palace insiders have referred to as a comprehensive protection protocol, a framework designed to shield working royals from threats both physical and reputational. The implementation of this protocol had immediate and far-reaching consequences. According to sources familiar with palace operations, the measures put in place went well beyond typical security arrangements. They involved a fundamental restructuring of access, communication channels, and the informal networks that connect various branches of the royal family. In practical terms, this meant that certain individuals who had previously maintained connections to the working royals, however tenuous, found those connections quietly severed. Invitations that might have been extended as a matter of courtesy were no longer forthcoming. Communication channels that had remained open, perhaps out of a desire to maintain family harmony or simply because no one had formally closed them, went silent. Intermediaries who had occasionally passed messages or coordinated between different royal households found their roles no longer necessary or welcome. The changes were implemented with such efficiency that by the time most people in Britain were sitting down to breakfast, the new reality was already firmly in place. What made these actions particularly significant was their target. While the protection protocol was ostensibly about safeguarding Catherine, the practical effect was to create clear and unbridgeable distance between the working royals and Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Royal correspondents who have followed the family dynamics closely noted that while relations had been strained for some time, there had always remained a possibility, however remote, of eventual reconciliation or at least civil coexistence. These latest measures appeared to foreclose that possibility entirely. The speed with which everything unfolded took many by surprise. Royal institutions typically move with deliberate slowness, bound by tradition and protocol that can make even simple decisions seem to take months. Yet in this instance, there was an urgency that overrode normal procedures. Palace staff, accustomed to careful consideration and multiple levels of approval for even minor matters, found themselves implementing major changes based on direct instructions from the future king. The message was clear. This was not a matter for committees or lengthy deliberation. Action was required immediately, and it would be comprehensive. For Meghan Markle specifically, the implications were profound. Since stepping back from royal duties in 2020 and relocating to California, she and Harry had maintained what might be described as an ambiguous position. They were no longer working royals, yet they retained their titles and certain ceremonial connections to the institution. They had given interviews critical of the royal family, yet family members had occasionally extended olive branches or expressed hope for improved relations. This ambiguity had allowed for speculation about potential future roles or gradual rehabilitation within the family structure. That ambiguity was now eliminated. According to multiple reports from royal correspondents, the measures William authorized effectively ended any remaining formal or informal ties. There would be no invitations to family events beyond the most unavoidable ceremonial occasions where protocol absolutely demanded their presence. There would be no consultation on matters affecting the broader family. There would be no coordination between their public activities and those of the working royals. The separation, while not announced publicly, was as complete as it could be without formal legal action. The impact rippled outward from London to California. In the days following William's decision, observers noted subtle but telling changes in how Meghan and Harry were treated by various institutions and organizations. Media outlets that had previously maintained careful balance in their coverage began speaking more definitively about the couple's permanent separation from royal duties. Commentators, who had hedged their analysis with qualifiers like possibly or potentially, started using more conclusive language. The shift was not coordinated through any central instruction, but rather reflected a collective recognition that something fundamental had changed. Business relationships also felt the tremors. Meghan had built a public profile in the United States, partly on the strength of her royal connection, however contentious that connection had become. Brands and organizations that had partnered with her did so at least partly because of the prestige and attention that came with royal association. As news filtered through industry networks that the palace had taken decisive action to distance itself, some partners began reassessing their commitments. Planned projects were quietly postponed. Negotiations for future ventures stalled as lawyers and publicists tried to understand the new landscape. Representatives for various organisations that had worked with the Sussexes found themselves in an awkward position. They could not publicly acknowledge that the royal connection had been a significant factor in their decisions, as that would seem opportunistic. Yet privately, many recognised that the calculus had changed. A royal connection that comes with controversy and active opposition from the institution itself is far different from one that maintains at least nominal family support. Television networks and streaming services that had invested in content featuring or produced by the couple also had to reconsider. The appeal of royal insider perspectives depends partly on the perception that the insiders still have access to information and relationships within the institution. If that access is definitively cut off, the value proposition changes. While existing contracts would be honoured, future deals would need to be evaluated against this new reality. Throughout all of this, Prince William maintained a carefully controlled public presence. He understood that visible anger or confrontation would only feed media speculation and create precisely the kind of drama that the protection protocol was designed to prevent. Instead, when he appeared in public, it was always with Catherine by his side. The message conveyed through these appearances was subtle but unmistakable to those watching closely. Observers noted the protective gestures, the way William positioned himself, the careful attention he paid to Catherine's comfort and well-being at every engagement. These were not dramatic displays, but rather the quiet signals of a husband who had drawn a line and would not allow it to be crossed. Royal body language experts and veteran correspondents who had covered the family for decades recognized something had shifted. There was a finality to William's demeanour that had not been present before. The British public, generally supportive of Catherine, particularly following her health challenges, began to understand that something significant had occurred even without official confirmation. Social media discussions shifted in tone. Where there had been endless speculation about potential reconciliation between the brothers or future roles for Harry and Meghan within royal life, there was now growing acceptance that such scenarios were no longer realistic. The narrative had changed from when they might return to acknowledging they would not. By the end of that first week, the transformation was complete. What had been years of uncertainty, strained relationships, and ongoing speculation had been replaced by clarity. The boundaries were established, the protections were in place, and the royal family had reorganized itself around a new reality. Meghan Markle's position, once a subject of endless debate and analysis, was now definitively settled. She was outside the institution, and that door, having been closed with such deliberate finality, would not reopen. The intelligence dossier that prompted Prince William's decisive action contained details that went far beyond typical social media criticism. Investigators who compiled the report had spent weeks analysing patterns, tracing digital footprints, and following financial transactions across international borders. What they uncovered painted a disturbing picture of coordinated effort rather than organic public sentiment. The evidence showed networks of accounts operating in synchronized patterns, posting content at carefully timed intervals designed to maximize visibility and impact. These were not ordinary social media users expressing genuine opinions about public figures. The analysis revealed bot armies, automated accounts programmed to mimic human behavior while amplifying specific narratives. These accounts would lie dormant for extended periods, building apparent legitimacy through occasional innocuous posts about unrelated topics, only to suddenly activate in coordinated waves when targeting Catherine. The sophistication involved suggested professional operation rather than amateur trolling. Financial investigators traced payment streams to shell companies registered in jurisdictions known for minimal disclosure requirements. These companies had purchased services from firms specializing in artificial social media engagement, the kind of operations that sell followers, likes, and coordinated posting campaigns to anyone willing to pay. The money trails crossed multiple countries, deliberately obscured through layers of transactions designed to prevent identification of the ultimate source. Yet the very existence of these payment records confirmed that resources were being deployed specifically to attack the Princess of Wales. The timing patterns were particularly revealing. Investigators documented how negative activity would spike immediately before or during Catherine's public appearances. When she attended the Wimbledon Championships in July, fulfilling her role as patron of the All England Lawn Tennis Club despite ongoing cancer, treatment, A coordinated wave of criticism flooded social media platforms. The posts questioned her priorities, suggested she was not truly ill, or criticized her for appearing in public when she should be resting. The contradictory nature of these attacks, simultaneously claiming she was both neglecting duties and inappropriately seeking attention, indicated they were not based on consistent genuine concern, but rather designed to create negativity, regardless of her actions. Similar patterns emerged around her appearance at Trooping the Colour in June, her first public engagement of the year. Within minutes of images appearing showing Catherine on the Buckingham Palace balcony with her family, accounts began posting critical commentary. The speed and volume suggested pre-prepared content released on cue rather than spontaneous reaction. Investigators found that many of these posts used identical or nearly identical language, sometimes with only minor variations to avoid automatic detection as spam. The content of the attacks was calculated to exploit vulnerability. During Catherine's chemotherapy treatment, when she had limited capacity to respond publicly and when most would expect a period of protection and support, the intensity actually increased. Posts questioned the legitimacy of her illness, spread unfounded speculation about her condition, and criticized every aspect of how she and the palace handled her health crisis. Some suggested she was exaggerating for sympathy, while others claimed the palace was hiding the true severity of her condition. The contradictory nature of these narratives mattered less than their collective impact in creating an atmosphere of constant negativity and suspicion. Investigators also identified what they termed narrative seeding, where false or misleading claims would first appear in obscure online forums before being systematically amplified. A rumor might begin in an anonymous message board, then be picked up by newly nerds, created social media accounts, shared by the bot networks, and eventually reach platforms where it could be seen by millions. By the time these narratives reached mainstream visibility, they carried a false appearance of organic spread, as though multiple independent sources had arrived at similar conclusions. In reality, the spread was orchestrated from the beginning. The psychological impact on Catherine was significant. According to those close to the princess, she had always understood that public life came with scrutiny and criticism. She had spent years developing resilience to media attention and had generally managed to maintain perspective about negative commentary. However, the relentless nature of this coordinated campaign, particularly during her cancer treatment, took a toll that even her considerable strength could not entirely deflect. There was a moment recalled by those familiar with the situation when Catherine asked a question that crystallized the cruelty of what she was enduring. In a private conversation with William, exhausted from treatment and struggling to understand the hostility directed at her during such a vulnerable time, she asked why people seemed to hate her for surviving. The question was not self-pitying, but genuinely bewildered. She had shared her diagnosis publicly, partly to help others facing similar battles, to reduce stigma around cancer, and to explain her temporary reduction in public duties. The response had been an intensification of attacks. For William, hearing that question from his wife was a turning point. It confirmed what the intelligence dossier had already suggested, that remaining silent and hoping the attacks would eventually fade was not a viable strategy. The traditional royal approach of never complain, never explain might preserve dignity in the face of ordinary criticism, but it offered no protection against a coordinated digital assault designed to inflict maximum psychological damage during a period of physical vulnerability. The decision to bring the evidence to King Charles was not made lightly. William understood that what he was proposing would have implications far beyond immediate family protection. Establishing clear boundaries and severing connections, even informal ones with other family members, was a step that could not easily be reversed. It represented a fundamental shift in how the royal family would operate, moving away from the traditional approach of maintaining unity at almost any cost toward a more strategic model focused on protecting the core institution. When William arrived at Clarence House and presented the dossier to his father, the king's response was measured but firm. Charles had himself experienced decades of media scrutiny and family conflict played out in public. He understood the pressures involved and the toll they could take. However, the evidence before him showed something different from traditional media coverage or public criticism. This was targeted, funded, and deliberately timed to cause maximum harm to someone recovering from serious illness. The king's agreement to support decisive action reflected his recognition that the monarchy itself was under attack. Protecting Catherine was not simply about defending one individual, however beloved, but about preserving the integrity and stability of the institution. If coordinated campaigns could successfully undermine public confidence in working royals, particularly during moments of vulnerability, then the entire structure became susceptible to manipulation by anyone with sufficient resources and malicious intent. Senior royals convened to discuss the appropriate response. These meetings, held in private and away from any staff who might later speak to journalists, were characterized by unusual unanimity. There was broad agreement that the situation required comprehensive measures, not symbolic gestures. The days of issuing statements asking for privacy while otherwise maintaining normal operations were over. What was needed was a systematic reorganization of access, communication, and relationships to create genuine protective barriers. Legal teams were brought in to advise on what actions could be taken within existing frameworks and what new measures might be necessary. Digital security specialists outlined strategies for monitoring and countering bot networks, though they cautioned that completely stopping such operations was difficult when they originated from multiple jurisdictions with varying levels of cooperation. Public relations advisors warned that visible confrontation might backfire, suggesting instead an approach of quiet but comprehensive boundary setting. The strategy that emerged combined legal, technical, and social elements. Cease and desist notices would be sent to platforms hosting the most egregious coordinated attacks, demanding removal of bot networks and artificial amplification. Media outlets would be quietly informed that participation in amplifying obviously coordinated smear campaigns would have consequences for their future access to royal events and information. And most significantly, personal and professional connections that could potentially serve as conduits for further attacks would be systematically closed. Throughout all of this, the focus remained on Catherine's well-being and the monarchy's stability. Every measure was evaluated based on whether it would genuinely reduce the attacks and create space for Catherine to recover and resume her duties without constant coordinated harassment. The response was not about revenge or punishment, but about establishing conditions under which the working royals could function effectively despite the existence of hostile actors with significant resources. By the time these meetings concluded and implementation began, a consensus had formed among senior royals. The era of hopeful ambiguity, of maintaining connections in case they might eventually prove useful for family harmony, was over. The evidence showed clearly that such openness had been exploited rather than appreciated. The new approach would be characterized by clarity, firm boundaries, and unwavering protection of those doing the actual work of the monarchy. The decisions made in response to the coordinated campaign against Catherine represent more than protective measures for a single individual. According to royal historians and commentators who have studied the monarchy's evolution, these actions signal a broader transformation in how the institution will operate under future leadership. Prince William's approach to handling this crisis offers insight into the kind of monarch he is likely to become when he eventually ascends to the throne. The concept of a streamlined monarchy has been discussed within royal circles for years. King Charles himself has long advocated for a smaller, more focused institution centered on direct heirs and their immediate families. The logic behind this approach is both practical and strategic. A smaller group of working royals means clearer lines of responsibility, more efficient use of resources, and reduced opportunities for conflicting messages or embarrassing scandals involving peripheral family members. It also reflects modern expectations about public institutions, where taxpayers increasingly expect value and accountability from those receiving state support. However, what William appears to be implementing goes beyond his father's vision of gradual reduction through natural attrition. The younger prince is taking a more active role in determining who will be part of the working monarchy and under what conditions. Royal commentator Jenny Bond, who covered the family for the BBC for many years, has observed that William already has clear ideas about the core team that will support him when he becomes king. These choices reflect not just family relationships, but assessments of capability, reliability, and alignment with the institution's long-term interests. The structure William envisions reportedly focuses on a tight circle of working royals who can be trusted to represent the crown effectively while maintaining absolute discretion about internal family matters. This means individuals who understand that their public roles require putting institutional interests ahead of personal grievances or commercial opportunities. It means people who recognise that being a working royal involves genuine service rather than leveraging the position for other purposes. In practical terms, this approach helps explain recent decisions about who remains inside the royal circle and who finds themselves on the outside. The distancing of Harry and Meghan, while painful on a personal level, aligns with a strategic vision that prioritises institutional stability over family sentimentality. From William's perspective, as reported by sources familiar with his thinking, maintaining ambiguous connections with family, members whose interests and priorities diverge from the monarchy's core mission creates vulnerabilities that can be exploited. The speed and decisiveness with which William acted in response to the attacks on Catherine demonstrate a leadership style that differs markedly from previous generations. His grandfather, Prince Philip, and his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, operated during an era when the palace could largely control media narratives through careful management of access and information. Scandals could be contained through strategic silence and the understanding that certain topics remained off-limits to respectable journalists. That world no longer exists. William has come of age in an environment of 24-hour news cycles, social media, and global tabloid industries that operate beyond British legal jurisdiction. He watched his mother, Princess Diana, pursued by paparazzi and destroyed by media intrusion. He experienced his own privacy violations, from unauthorized photographs to leaked personal information. He saw his brother and sister-in-law attempt to manage media relationships on their own terms, only to find themselves in escalating conflict with both the institution and the press. These experiences have shaped his understanding of what works and what does not in protecting both individuals and the monarchy itself. The approach William demonstrated in responding to the coordinated attacks shows a willingness to use all available tools, legal, technical, and institutional, to establish and enforce boundaries. This represents an evolution from the traditional royal stance of dignified silence. While he has not engaged in public confrontation or detailed explanations, he has authorized comprehensive behind-the-scenes action to neutralize threats and prevent their recurrence. The message is clear: there are lines that cannot be crossed without consequences, even if those consequences are implemented quietly rather than announced publicly. Royal experts suggest this approach will characterize William's eventual reign. He is likely to maintain the outward dignity and restraint expected of a monarch, while being far more proactive behind the scenes in protecting the institution and its members. The days of simply absorbing attacks and hoping public sympathy will eventually shift are over. In their place is a model that combines traditional discretion with modern protective strategies using legal frameworks, digital security, and strategic relationship management to create genuine barriers against those who would do harm. This evolution also reflects changing public expectations. Younger generations in Britain have less automatic deference toward the monarchy than their parents or grandparents. They expect royals to demonstrate actual value and purpose rather than relying on historical privilege. At the same time, they also expect institutions to protect individuals from harassment and coordinated attacks. William's response to the campaign against Catherine threads this needle, showing both strength in defending a family member and strategic thinking about institutional preservation. The implications extend to how the working royals will function on a day-to-day basis. A smaller, more focused team means each member carries greater responsibility and visibility. It also means there is less room for error or deviation from the institutional line. Those chosen to be part of this core group must accept that their personal preferences and commercial interests will always be subordinate to the monarchy's needs. This is a demanding standard, but one that William appears willing to enforce without exception. The reorganisation also has financial implications. The sovereign grant, which funds official royal activities, is subject to periodic review and public scrutiny. A streamlined monarchy with fewer working members can be presented as more cost-effective and better aligned with modern governance principles. This becomes particularly important as economic pressures affect ordinary Britons and questions about royal funding receive increased attention. By demonstrating that resources are concentrated on a smaller number of truly active working royals, the institution can make a stronger case for continued public support. However, this approach is not without risks. A smaller group of working royals means less capacity to cover the hundreds of engagements, patronages, and ceremonial duties that the monarchy traditionally fulfills. There are concerns about whether Catherine, William, and their children, along with a handful of other family members, can adequately represent the crown across all the necessary functions. Some royal commentators worry that reducing the number of working royals too drastically could lead to an institution that seems remote or disconnected from ordinary life. William appears to believe these risks are manageable compared to the dangers of maintaining a larger, less controllable, extended royal family. His experience watching various relatives create complications through their personal choices, business ventures, or public statements has convinced him that quality matters more than quantity. Better to have a small team that consistently represents the monarchy well than a larger group that includes individuals whose actions undermine institutional credibility. The handling of Meghan's position within this framework illustrates the approach clearly. Rather than maintaining ambiguous connections that could be misinterpreted or exploited, William chose definitive separation. This eliminates uncertainty about her status, prevents situations where her activities might be confused with official royal business, and removes potential pressure points where the institution could be manipulated or embarrassed. It is a clean break implemented without public drama, but with absolute finality. Looking forward, observers expect William to continue refining this model as he, Schwant, moves closer to kingship. The core group of working royals will likely be formalized, with clear expectations about duties, behavior, and the relationship between public service and private life. Those who cannot or will not meet these expectations will find themselves outside the circle, regardless of blood relationships or historical precedent. The monarchy William envisions is one that combines centuries of tradition with ruthless modern efficiency, maintaining public-facing dignity while operating with strategic precision behind palace walls. This transformation reflects broader changes in how leadership and institutions function in the 21st century. The assumption that family loyalty automatically trumps other considerations no longer holds in an era of constant scrutiny and instant global communication. William has demonstrated that he will protect those who serve the institution faithfully while distancing himself from those whose interests diverge, even when that creates personal pain or public criticism. It is a model built not on sentiment but on strategic necessity, designed to ensure the monarchy survives and thrives for generations to come.